What's going on, everybody? Luigi here, and today I'm going to show you how to fill out an assignment of contract step by step.
Let's get started. Please help me welcome.
What's going on, everybody? Luigi here. An assignment of contract is basically you stepping out of your shoes and letting somebody else step in, okay, with the exact same terms and everything. Now, let me give you an example of what an assignment is. So I don't know if you remember when Singular, this telephone company, used to have cell phones, and then AT&T bought Singular. The people that had Singular, they didn't skip a beat. They just kept using their phone, and the only thing that changed was the little icon on the top of their phone, and now it said AT&T, not Singular. Singular basically assigned all of the phone contracts to AT&T. It's just basically, here, I'm assigning them to you. You're taking over them. So that's basically what an assignment of contract is we have a contract with the seller for a price on the property, and then we're gonna assign it to another buyer in exchange for profit. So the lower you can lock up a property, the bigger your assignment fee can be. One of the biggest questions that I always get is, when should I use an assignment of contract opposed to a double escrow contract? Well, you want to use an assignment of contract whenever you're making $10,000 or less. Okay, and the reason being is because with an assignment of contract, everything is disclosed. Everything is in the open air. Everybody can see what you're making on that transaction. All right, if you're making $5,000, your buyer will know the price that you have the property with the seller. Anything above that, you want to use a double escrow contract. And the reason is because $10,000, people are okay with you making that kind of money. They're not going to balk at it. It's also kind of market dependent. There's some markets where the average deal profit is $5,000, $3,000. So 10,000 is a pretty significant number, but the rule of thumb that I use in my business, 10,000 and below, use an assignment of contract. Anything above that, use a double escrow contract. How to fill out an assignment of contract, right? That's a good question. Well, let's go ahead, hop on my computer, and I'll share my screen with you, and I'll show you exactly how to do it step by step.
All right, so we're here. We got an assignment of contract in front of us, all right? And it's very simple. All this agreement is stating is this agreement is made between, and we're gonna put your company, hereafter known as the assignor. So you are the assignor, and then your buyer. We're gonna put here your buyer. Your buyer's name, which is known as the assignee for the property located at, whatever your property address is, your new deal, okay? Whereas the assignor entered into a real estate purchase contract with the seller, so this is the seller's name, your seller's name, for the subject property. Whereas the assigner wishes to assign its rights and interest in the real estate purchase contract. It is hereby agreed between assignor, you, and assignee as follows. The assignee shall pay an assignor an assignment fee in the amount of whatever it is that you're getting. So for example, if you locked up the property, let's look at the one that we were just looking at. We have it at $145. If I find a buyer, let's just say worst case scenario at $195, that's $50,000. So I'm going to put in there $50,000. Now, I would never use an assignment of contract if I was making $50,000 in profit. And there's a reason why. So I'm going to break it down for you right now. It's a very simple rule. $10,000 in profit or below, you want to use an assignment of contract. Okay, it's very rare that buyers balk at $10,000 assignment fees. Now, $10,000 and above, we're going to use a double escrow purchase agreement, which we're going to be using here in the next video. But for this particular one, let's just say we sold it at $155, so we're making $10,000. So I'm going to put that there. The assigner and assignee agree to utilize the services of the closing agent designated by the assignor. In other words, your buyer agrees to using whoever your title and escrow or attorney's office is, okay? And that's the rule of thumb. We're going to get into this in the next module. It's very important that you always demand to use your own escrow company. Otherwise, you're asking for trouble. All right. So again, very simple. Number 2 just means that you're going to use your own escrow and title company. Buyer must close on the transaction. I always put 10 days. So today's December 27th. So I'm going to put December, if it's December 27th, I'm just going to put January 7th, 2017. Assignee shall deposit a $10,000 non-refundable deposit in escrow by 5 p.m. I like to do it within 24 hours, so I'm going to put December 28th. Again, always, you want the deposit in within 24 hours whenever you go into contract with the buyer. You want a deposit in escrow ASAP, because that way you can solidify and know that your deal is going to close, or if they don't do it, then you can start looking for another buyer. Purchase price on the subject property, if we're looking at the deal that I just showed you that we just got under contract, is $145. It says here the buyer, so we're going to just put your buyer. Your buyer's name is to pay a $10,000 assignment fee to my company. Let's just put your company at the close of escrow, paying a total of $155,000. And then assignee accepts all terms and conditions of the contract for sale and purchase between assigner and the seller in its entirety. When you're doing an assignment of contract, you have to provide the original purchase contract that you have with the seller to the buyer. So in other words, with an assignment of contract, everything is out in the open, everything's disclosed, they know your terms, they know your price, and that's okay, because that's why we only use an assignment when we're doing $10,000 and below in profit. So you will provide a copy to your buyer, because basically what they're doing is they're stepping into your shoes and taking over the agreement that you have with the seller for a fee, right? So they need to know what they're getting into. They need to know what terms you negotiated with the seller. This contract is not assignable. We want to make sure we have that in there, because we don't want them to just daisy chain your deal, say they want the property, and then they lock it up. Now you're tied in. You can't do anything because you're under contract with somebody, and now they're trying to wholesale it to somebody else. Now, every now and then, rare situations, your buyer will say, hey, I'm just assigning it to another investor of mine. And if they're savvy and you've done deals with them before, then it's not that big of a deal. But if you don't know them, you do not want them assigning your contract, because you don't even know if they have a buyer or not. Okay, so just leave that in there. Then we get into this, number 8. This assignment is contingent on seller providing clear and marketable title to assignee prior to the closing date. In the event that clear and marketable title cannot be obtained, assignee shall be released from this assignment and refunded earnest money deposit. That's basically telling your buyer the seller's going to have to provide clear title, otherwise, they're released from this agreement. It also says assignee acknowledges the receipt of legible copies of the original contract for sale and purchase in its entirety, including all addendums associated with this transaction. In other words, you're providing them with a copy of your contract and any addendums or changes to the contract that you have with the seller, so that the buyer can see if they're taking over your agreement. Number 10, assignee acknowledges that the property will be delivered with tenants in possession. As we said in this module, we always sell our properties with tenants in possession unless otherwise negotiated. So we're going to just keep that in there. In the event that the assignee buyer fails to close on the transaction or is in default of this agreement, the assignor, you, shall have the right to terminate this assignment of contract and declare the assignee in default, wherein the assignor, you, shall retain the sum of $10,000 as liquidated damages and all the right, title, and interest pursuant to the real estate purchase contract shall automatically revert to the assignor without notice. That basically just means if your buyer starts playing games and does not perform per this agreement, you get to keep the $10,000 and you get to go ahead and sell the property to the next guy, okay? Number 13, assigner retains the right to renegotiate the price on the original contract with the seller at any time up to the closing date. At closing, the newly reduced price will be reflected on the settlement statement. The assignor's assignment fee shall be increased by the amount of the price reduction. the assignee's total purchase price shall remain the same. In other words, you have a right to renegotiate with the seller even through the escrow period, even up to the closing date. And let's just say you go back, you do a price reduction, just like I showed you here in one of these modules, and you get a $10,000 reduction. You just send that reduction to escrow, that addendum with the seller, and your fee will be increased $10,000 without approval by your buyer. Okay, simple as that. Now 14A and B, it's just basically saying that you're selling the property, you're not making any guarantees. Basically the buyer, they need to do their own due diligence, and that's their responsibility to do their own due diligence. In other words, you're washing your hands legally with these clauses here in number 14, A, B, C, D, and E. Okay? It's very simple. You're just basically saying that the buyers need to do their homework before buying the property and that you're not making any guarantees whatsoever. And then you just assignor, you sign here, and the assignee signs over here. And that is how you successfully and properly fill out an assignment of contract agreement. And then you take this, you get them to sign, you provide them a copy of the original contract with the seller, and then you send everything to escrow, and you wait for the property to close, and you get paid. So hope this video helps. Come back to it whenever you need any clarity on this, but it's very straightforward, very simple, and very easy to do. This is obviously one of those things that you want to delegate. You don't want to be stuck every day looking at this and filling out assignment of contracts. At least in the beginning you will, but later on you want to delegate and automate your business to the maximum you can.
Now, if you got value out of this video and you learned how to fill out an assignment of contract, let me know. Like it, share it, subscribe, comment below. Let me know, were you filling out the same way? When were you using assignments of contract? Let me know in the comments. I want to connect with you. And for now, go out there, start selling some properties, lock them up, and go out and do something. And I'll see you on the next video.